Hey everybody, it's Fabrizio Aiello, creator of Horace H.H.Hoover, and today I want to talk about critiquing your critiques. Basically, how to receive a good critique, how to tell the good from the bad, how to filter through those, and then when you do find a good critique, how to apply it to your work, and then how to give feedback on your feedback. That way, whoever is providing the critiques understands what worked for you and what didn't work for you. That way, you could potentially have a sort of a long relationship with the person, and it's most beneficial to you. So the first thing is receiving feedback. And I will differentiate feedback from critiques. Feedback is more of a superficial analysis of your work. It could be, thought it was fun, I liked it was exciting, things like that. And that is very valuable, but it's not necessarily a critique. Critique is really analyzing your work with a critical eye. And then once it's analyzed, articulating and providing you as the artist writer with more information than you had going into it. So for example, every critique has to have good and bad. And that doesn't mean every drawing is objectively good and objectively bad, but there are positive and negatives to every drawing or story. You can't have one without the other. To say a drawing is just throw it in the trash. It's not worthwhile. Don't even bother fixing things. We wouldn't have critiques if that was the case, because you do need to fix it. So if you have a drawing that the perspective is bad, maybe the storytelling is bad, but the anatomy actually is pretty good, then somebody who knows how to give critiques is really going to point that out. They're going to say, okay, the perspective is good, but the storytelling is confusing here, here, and here, or vice versa. And the reason I say that it has to have positive isn't because it should lessen the blow, but it means that if a person is only giving you negative, then they really haven't analyzed the work in its entirety. And that it's a clue that they have potentially either A, ulterior motives in what they say to you, or B, they're just not sort of educated in how to give a critique. Some people just think an opinion is a critique, and that is not the case either. An opinion is 100% subjective. For example, if I do a drawing of a high-tech sci-fi street view that's, very cyberpunk, and somebody gives me a critique saying it's too sci-fi and not fantasy enough, then I know that that's just purely a subjective view of my work. They don't understand what I'm trying to achieve. So off the bat, you can really just I don't want to say dismiss that, but it's easy to tell what critiques you can immediately avoid from the get-go. So once you receive a critique and you think it's good, it has has positive, it has negatives. The second is it really has to be articulate. If you say that the storytelling is confusing, they really have to be able to say why it's confusing or where at minimum. In panel 3, I'm not sure what's going on. In this part of the story, the language is confusing. I don't know who's getting shot or what. So it really has to give you specific information on what the problem is. Now, I don't think that they should be giving you the solution. And some people will do that. They will offer their solution. And you can take that, I would say take it with a grain of salt, because they ultimately can never know what your intentions are. They can see a page or a part of a story or the whole thing, but they don't know maybe what comes after that story or before it. They might not know subtext. They're not going to know every aspect of it. So I would say if they give you solutions, listen to it, but that's not the best part of the critique to listen to. Sometimes you will need to just stand your ground. And I think that really comes from confidence, and the confidence comes from how far off is your piece of work in relation to your goal? Meaning, if I do a drawing and I set out to do sort of a big troll character with a tiny head, long arms, and little legs, right? And that's my goal. That's what I set out to do. If I get a critique saying, the proportions are off, his head's way too small, then they don't really understand what I'm trying to do. So once you receive what I would consider a valid critique, well, the first thing to do is really give it a shot. So even if the critique is something like, the main character really is unlikable, the main character, I don't understand what's going on here or there. It may seem like a big change, an extreme change, but give it a shot. Run it through in your head. Imagine the scenario where your character didn't do that. Really give it a chance, because there are times where, you're stuck on your view of a particular story point you shouldn't be emotionally attached to. Ultimately, the reader is there to understand what's going on, and if there's any confusion at all, you have to give it a chance. So I would say at minimum, walk through every point, give it a really fair shake to see if it's something that works or not. Again, with the caveat that the person giving the critique doesn't really know ultimately every aspect of the story. So once you give it a shot, There's nothing to say that you have to take every critique or every aspect of a critique and implement it. Some you take, some you leave. The ones that you see the problems immediately, where you're like, oh, you know what? I thought his arm looked too long, and the critique is his arm's too long. Absolutely, unequivocally do those critiques. The ones that you were iffy about, do those critiques. The other ones, give a fair shake. If not, leave them on the side of the road and just move on. And I think once you do that and you receive enough critiques, hopefully you can actually establish a relationship with people. And I would say if people are really interested in helping you and helping with your art or your story, then giving them feedback on their feedback can potentially really help. Just tell them, hey, it was great when you told me this in the critique. You were really specific about what wasn't working or what you were confused about. Let them know. That way the next time it's more clarity for you. They actually feel good about the critique, that you paid attention to it, and you can actually potentially establish a relationship with somebody that you go to all the time, and you know that essentially they have reliable critiques. Anytime you have something new, it's like this person always gives me good critiques, even if I don't implement them all. Because a good critique can last a lifetime. And by that I mean, if somebody points out a huge deficit in your artwork, you will bring that with you into every future piece of artwork. Trust me, you'll think about that every time you draw. Finding people that can give good critiques, understanding how to use the ones that you do get, and implementing them, it's how we progress as artists. Thanks again for listening. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.